you don't do it for the money, right? Because you can't count on the money. You know, you do it because it's the only thing you can do. I was actually studying psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and a friend of mine turned me on to a class which was actually called sequential imagery, because they didn't want people to know that it was a film class, because there would have been too many people trying to get in. And it was just film. I mean, nothing was digital. They were shooting with Bolex cameras and editing with splicers and tape. And then I got a moviola, and I shot another film on my own while I was still studying psychology. And this was a film about a tavern just in West Philadelphia but it was populated by either college students, local alcoholics, the postman, and a weird sort of proto-punk band called Ken Queter and the Secret Kids. And it was the first time I kind of made my own film without somebody sort of looking over my shoulder and stuff. I mean, in this business, if you're sitting around waiting for success to be happy, you're missing your life in the process.
About, not waiting for the happy calls, because yes, there are moments that they're incoming, there are moments that, long moments of silence.
It's not giving up and having a life outside of it that gives you energy.
Make things that matter to you. And if it matters to you, don't give up, right? So make sure that you work on things that you really do care about. Right? And if you do, then maybe you'll succeed and maybe you won't, but at least you tried something you cared about.
Welcome to another episode of Ambitchiously Intelligent. Today we have a great guest and someone that I'm really excited about. It's Carl Haber. And Carl is a director, writer, producer, and an educator with an amazing international career. He started working in New York with Mazel's films. He also directed TV films in Italy, produced for Italian television and LA. And also he led a film school in Rome, which is called Rome International Film School. And this is where we met. I'm currently a student, and I'm enjoying the first-hand experience being mentored by Carl. Carl, welcome to our podcast. It's a pleasure for us. And we want to start at the beginning to see what drew you to filmmaking in the first place, who inspired you, what are your heroes, and what you can tell us about your journey.
It's a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay.
Yes.
What started me? I was actually studying psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and a friend of mine turned me on to, I always liked movies, but a friend of mine turned me on to a class at the University of Pennsylvania in the Fine Arts Department, which was actually called sequential imagery. And it was called sequential imagery because they didn't want people to know that it was a film class, because there would have been too many people trying to get in. So nice. It was run by a guy named Rudy Burkhart, and he was the teacher. And Rudy was part of this sort of downtown independent New York film scene. He was like buddies with Andy Warhol, and he used to work on films with Red Grooms, who was a famous sort of animator and artist, and worked with actors like Taylor Mead, who was one of Andy Warhol's crazy actors. And Rudy taught this course, and it was just film. I mean, nothing was digital back then, right? It was just 16 millimeter film. And so we all had to make a film, and we didn't know anything about anything. I mean, we were shooting with Bolex cameras and editing with splicers and tape and stuff. And I had been, when I was in high school, we did a play that was written by Tristan Tzara, who's a Romanian surrealist, and called The Gas Heart. And so I decided that my first film I would ever make would be an adaptation of The Gas Heart, which is completely insane because it has no logic. It's the kind of thing that I would tell you, Valeria, don't do that, really. So I made this film, and I was just going around Philadelphia shooting, eerie looking things that looked weird. And then I had a bunch of friends who wore a lot of weird makeup because the characters in the film, in the play and in the film were eye, ear, nose, neck, eyebrow,
Wow.
and so I would black out everything except that thing on those people and then shoot them. And I don't know, it was kind of weird. I have not found a copy of that film.
Oh man, I wanted to ask. Can we see
Yeah,
it? I want to
yeah,
see
I would like to.
it.
I would like to see it again too. I haven't seen it in 40 years
Oh
or
my god, that
something.
would be so amazing. Please find it.
Yeah, I don't know because I moved so much and a lot of my stuff sort of disappeared. But maybe I have. I mean, I have some cans downstairs. I have to
But
go
it's
through.
film, right? So
It's film,
yeah.
yes, 16 millimeter. Anyway, so we made that film, and that turned me on. And then I got a moviola, upright moviola, into my apartment and a small room, whatever. And I shot another film on my own while I was still studying psychology. And this was a film about a tavern, a bar, just in West Philadelphia that was a sort of weird place because it was run by a couple Irish brothers, Jim and Joe Murphy, but it was populated by either college students, local alcoholics, the postman, and a weird sort of proto-punk band called Ken Queter and the Secret Kids.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
so I filmed the tavern, and I wasn't even legally drinking age when I did this film,
Oh.
but I made this film about this bar, and it was like a documentary, and it was the first time I kind of made my own film without somebody sort of looking over my shoulder and stuff. And I was cutting that film at home, and I was also working in a jazz club in Philadelphia called the Foxhole. And one night I was mixing a concert that was of Sun Ra and his orchestra. And Sun Ra came up to me because somebody told him I was doing a film. And he said, "You have editing equipment at your house, man?" I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." He said, "You mind if I come by and ask you to cut something back into my movie?" I said, "No, that's okay," because he was doing a movie called Space is the Place. And because, Sun Ra, I don't know if you're familiar with Sun Ra, he's a fantastic jazz musician who had a huge orchestra he called the orchestra. And Sun Ra claimed he was born on Saturn
Oh,
and that he was a pharaoh.
okay.
Okay. And he used to dress like ancient Egyptians and stuff. I mean, he was quite a character.
Again, I want to see this.
Yeah, well, you can see Space is the Place on Google. On YouTube. I'm sure there are clips of it. But Sun Ra's band was amazing. In fact, crazy story. Total parenthesis. The orchestra leader who took over Sun Ra's band, his orchestra, after Sun Ra passed away, is a guy named Marshall Allen. Marshall came with Sun Ra to my apartment, and also their very tall saxophone player, John Gilmore. The three of them came into my apartment for me to cut a scene back into the movie that the Hollywood editors had cut out. And so anyway, so we became friends. Marshall Allen is now 100 years old, and he's coming out with his first solo album.
Oh wow.
100, and it's like been in the news. And I posted something on my Facebook because I knew Marshall, and I think this is the coolest thing. 100 years old, first solo album.
This
Right.
is
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is cool.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what got me into making films, and I decided I wasn't going to continue with psychology. I mean, I got the degree. I mean, I finished, but I knew that wasn't for me. So I wanted to go to film school, but I didn't want to do it in America because I didn't want to be like all the others going to NYU and USC and UCLA. So I applied to London Film School, and I got in, but I had to wait till January. So between May, when I graduated college, and January, I worked for a guy named Amos Vogel. Amos was Eastern European, or I don't know, maybe he was from Vienna, I'm not sure, but he came to the United States, got to get away from Hitler and all that. And he became very famous in New York as a film, sort of, film society type of guy. He created a company called Cinema 16, which was a distribution company that brought films from Europe and independent films. And he wrote a very famous book called Film as a Subversive Art. And it's a great book. And he had a course at the Edinburgh School, University of Pennsylvania, that was fondly known as Monday Night at the Movies. And he also taught a graduate course, and he hired me as his teaching assistant for his graduate course. And I got a chance to sit in, obviously, on those classes. And the class that he was doing that I was sort of running for him was on film composition. And we studied 4 films. I say we, I mean 4 films in particular, black and white films. Okay, there was Young Mr. Lincoln by John Ford. There was The Passion of Joan of Arc by Carl Dreyer. There was A Touch of Evil by Orson Welles. And there was Before the Revolution by Bertolucci. Okay. And I studied those films with Amos and his class, frame by frame, for an entire semester. Okay. By the time I got to film school, I was pretty turned on to Bertolucci by this, I mean, all of them, but especially Bertolucci, because, I mean, he was 24 when he made that film.
24.
And yeah, it's an amazing film. And so that was pretty much the inspiration. Then I went to film school, in London, and that was fun. Wasn't as good as our film school, I gotta say, because they didn't really teach us screenwriting or directing. It was a lot of playing with the toys, we had equipment to play with. It was mostly World War II era cameras and stuff like that. I mean, we had a Mitchell camera like this big. Yeah.
They were big.
Yeah, they were big.
Huge.
And, the kind of stuff that they taught us, it was cool. And we were editing. Everything was on film. But everything was obsolete like 3 years later, The good thing about being at film school in London was my fellow students, This was 1977, 78, 79. And basically everybody was coming, a lot of students were coming from oil-rich countries, right? So Venezuelans, Nigerians, Iranians, okay? This was before the Iranian Revolution. So I had, and then a lot of Venezuelans. And one of the Venezuelans was actually Cuban. And then he moved to London. But he was originally from Havana. And he became my film partner at school. Now, I'm this straight guy from Philadelphia, New York, and he's this gay guy from Cuba. And we became very sort of crazy, complementary filmmakers. And a film that we made, actually, which was inspired by the punk movement, which was growing at that time, became a BAFTA winner. We won a BAFTA for this fake documentary that we made with punks. And one of the punks became very famous later, Shane MacGowan. He became the head singer of the Pogues, Irish band. And I'm still in touch with Shanna. Shanna was the girl in the group that were the main actors in the film, and Shane and Shanna and another guy. And but Shane passed away. But recently, they actually used some of our film, Punk Kebab, in a documentary made about Shane that was produced by Johnny Depp, and that was sort of interesting to see that because. And he was an amazing.
May I ask, please, can we get that? Can we have that link to that so we can have it in the show notes for those?
Yeah. What, Punk Kebab?
Yeah.
You can find Punk Kebab on the British Film Institute website.
Yeah.
They still run it.
That's awesome.
Definitely need to send us these links. We definitely need to have it in the show notes that, if you're listening or please watching, it's beautiful if you're watching us.
Oh yeah.
that he can look it up, because what you're talking about, it sounds so interesting and fun.
Oh, it's insane, and I tell my students, the films we made in film school look like mud compared to what they do now. Okay.
But you
I
had
mean,
so much fun. It seems like you live the life. Every time you're telling the story, my ears are like opening. Like I have some sort of sensation, because it feels like, this is the life to live. This is the life of the filmmaker. That's so inspiring, so joyful.
Yeah.
we had fun, definitely. We were pretty crazy. One of the crazy things when we were in film school, Pedro, who was my partner, he directed Punk Kebab, right? I was one of the producers, and I shot some of it, and I edited it. And anyway, but Pedro and I wrote a screenplay together, that was really early. Like, nobody had written anything about gay people, okay? So, because I'm straight and he's gay, we wrote a script about two brothers, one of whom is straight and one of whom is gay, okay? And it involved a transvestite character named Sarah, and it had a very melodramatic title, like really long, sort of Lena Wertmuller style title, and we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, nobody taught us how to write a script at film school. This was 176 pages long, okay,
Oh, wow.
which is ridiculous. It's like The Irishman or something, So we didn't know what we were doing, and not only that, but it was on like these long legal-sized pages. I still have a copy of that script somewhere, and I can't believe, but we because we didn't know what we were doing, I sent the script to Columbia Pictures, right, just to see, in London, and they liked it. They optioned it. They sent a limo to pick us up and bring us in to sign a deal. And we did, and all the other film students at film school were like, who are these guys, right? They hated us. And they were very happy later, because ultimately Columbia Pictures went out of business, because the head of Columbia Pictures was a guy named David Beagleman in California, and he was arrested for forging signatures on checks of an actor. And he got caught, and the company was sold to Coca-Cola, and and then later Coca-Cola sold it to Sony, so now it's Sony Pictures, but what was Columbia Pictures became Coca-Cola and then Sony, and in the meantime, all the projects that they had taken, they dropped. Okay, the only things they made that year was The Eyes of Laura Mars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that's it. Everything else they stopped working on. So our project, which was one of 100, was dropped.
But what I love about your story and what we can learn from is that, as you said, we had no idea, so that there was nothing stopping you from sending it, because you were like, "Hey, why not?"
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
that
the
got you
courage
into
of the ignorant.
door. Yeah.
Right,
That's the best to have.
Well, yeah, I don't have that anymore, unfortunately.
We have to work on that. Let's get that back.
Yeah. Well,
Let's manifest.
maybe if get a lobotomy.
But I think that is exactly the plus a lot of the times, is when we're not overthinking, and we're like, oh, there are these rules and we can't do this and we can't do, well, like you guys, you were like, hey, why not? Logical. Okay, we need a studio. Yeah, let's send it over there.
Yeah.
And they loved it. I mean,
Yeah,
hello,
well,
a limo picking you up.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, but we didn't expect them to like it. But there was a story editor there named Susan McGregor, and she fell in love with this script. So all it takes sometimes is that one right person,
Right.
Yes.
which I'm still looking for now with new projects, but it never ends. That's the thing. You were talking about how is joyful and all, and it's like an interesting, fun life and all that. And it's true. I mean, but like I tell you guys, you don't do it for the money, right? Because you can't count on the money. You do it because it's the only thing you can do, ultimately.
Yes.
And then you just deal with the consequences, right? If it works out or if it doesn't. But you make a choice, and that courage you have to keep, Eva. You just can't lose that. But the sort of obliviousness you can't really keep. I mean,
No.
you learn things as you go, so.
Yeah.
Or maybe go back to it. What do you think about that, Carl? Like, you always just go back to it and allow yourself to do that and go like, why not? Why
Well, no,
not?
I mean, I think we try things all the time. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
working on something right now with my partner, David, who's, a significant producer with real solid history of credits and experience. And every time I talk to David, it's an education for me. And he's the one going out with our projects because he's the one who can get the phone calls answered. I'm some guy in Rome. I mean, they don't care. But David's in LA, and he's BAFTA award-winning producer with Gosford Park, and he was nominated for Best Picture, and he's worked with Robert Altman for 15 years, and so he's a known entity. Yeah. So he can do that crazy stuff like see if Meryl wants to play it or something. You know what I mean? I can't get her on the phone, but he could.
No,
So
we
that's
cannot. As it is. We never know.
Yeah. Well, I don't have her number.
Well,
She's not a Facebook friend of mine or anything like that.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know.
yes.
No, but you got to just use whatever connections you have.
Yeah.
The way that I became friends with David was through a coincidence. I was living in California. I'm really jumping around in this story right now, but anyway, I was living in
Keep going.
California, and my wife Carmen was out for a walk. We used to walk down to the beach. We lived in Santa Monica, and she was out for a walk and runs into an actress who lived a few blocks from us on the way to the beach, who we both really loved as an actress, and they became sort of friends. They started talking and became friends, and then I became friends, and also with her husband, who's a producer, and then through that husband producer, I met David, because I had a project that I wanted to do with that actress, and her husband wasn't sort of big enough to make something happen, so he brought David on board, and that's how I met David. So anyway, it's just the way things go, is these coincidences and things,
Yeah, it's this taking the steps. It's this trusting. You wanted to work with her, and you're like, okay, it's let's go there, and then something out of that beautiful happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
You asked me who were my influences earlier.
Yes. Oh, we know.
Beside-
I know that your biggest, hero is Billy Wilder, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. I can see
Yeah.
that. I can see that.
Tell me why.
Yeah.
I don't know you as well as Valeria.
No,
yes,
well-
yes, of course. Tell us.
Don't tell me.
But she's heard me for 3 months.
Yeah.
I can never get enough. I love your class, yes.
Oh well, thanks.
Well,
But yeah, no, Billy Wilder was a screenwriter director who, if I just think about my top 20 favorite films, then at least 4 of them are his. So that's already saying something. And
Which for?
well, The Apartment, Some Like It Hot, Sunset Boulevard, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's a bunch, even others. But I mean, there are a lot of other films that I love too, don't get me wrong. And then my other hero is more recent, and that's Vince Gilligan, who's the showrunner, producer, director, writer for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, which I think is elevated television to,
Yes.
cinema levels and beyond. And so I just think he's a brilliant guy. And so if I can inspire students to go in that direction, great. But I just think that it's important to learn how to write really well and to tell good stories. One of the differences between our film school and the school I went to is that we focus a lot more on that story development side of things, and then also working with actors, because usually student films look good, but they don't necessarily convince anybody of anything, because the stories are silly, or they're thin, or the acting is so-so. or worse. And so, but when we were in film school, when I was in film school, you had your occasionally really talented person who could do something great anyway. But most of the films just looked good and meant nothing, really, or were very superficial, angles on things. So I had to figure out how to do that and what to focus on. At one point, back before I started this school, and I had been teaching at the American University of Rome, and then because of just a number of things that happened, I got invited to teach at Savannah College of Art and Design, right, SCAD, which is a big school. It's like all of downtown Savannah is SCAD, basically. And I went there, and they spend like $1 million a year on equipment. Okay.
Nice.
But they also charge $50,000 per student,
That's so
and
nice.
they have
That's
and they
why
have
they have that.
and they have thousands of students. Okay, so, but their focus is on getting the students to be attracted to playing with all those toys. Yeah. So if a student really wants to be in a place where they have $1 million of equipment every year, then they should go to a place like that. But there's one little warning I'll give them, which is SCAD stands for Savannah College of Art and Design. But a lot of students also say that SCAD stands for Sleep Comes After Death.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That sounds
If that's
so
what you're
frustrating.
thinking, if you're out there, I'm just telling you that won't last for long, because without sleep, you ain't getting anywhere.
Yeah. Well, also, the other thing is you play with all these toys, and that's really great, but they're going to be obsolete a few years from now anyway.
Right.
So it's important to get a chance to play with that stuff. It's great, and then, you can get a professional job and you know how to handle that equipment. Sure, that's useful. But really, if you're not learning how to tell a story, or work with actors, what are you going to do? Well, if you want to be a writer or director, I think that's the problem. I mean, if you want to be a DP, then maybe that's a good thing if you can afford it,
But I really want to ask you then something, because there is this, like many emerging filmmakers, they debate between going to film school or just learning it on their own. And like, what do you think? Like, what does the film school offer? And like, you're talking about what your film school, I'm hearing the difference, which is beautiful, that you're going really deep into the storytelling, that, but what do you think there, that, where's the offer? There's the difference. Like, why would you say go to film school, or what,
I think it's like a shortcut.
Okay.
If you're lucky, okay. I mean, let's say, I don't know, you're Demi Moore's child, okay? And so you're in the middle of the business and somebody allows you to work on a big movie set and treats you with some respect, as opposed to just making you go do runs and stuff like that. And you actually have a chance to hang around and people will talk to you. Then it's very useful to do be on set and work on professional films. Of course, that's valuable, experience. And you can learn a lot that way, and you can talk to people who do things, and you get to know the David Levy's of the world and the others and stuff like that. That's an education too. I wouldn't shortchange that. The problem is that if you don't have that connection, okay, where and all you do is you get a job as a PA on something that you don't have relationships with the people, it's going to take you 2 years before you work your way up to a point where people even start teaching you anything, where they share the information with you, because they have to really like you, first of all. First, they want to make sure you're going to pick up the coffee and you come back with the right amount of sugar and stuff like that. And they're going to do that for 2 months before they ask you to do something else. So in the business, I think it's very important to get practical experience, absolutely, and work your butt off and work your way up in any department or anything. But if you go to film school, you'll learn a lot of stuff that on a job, it would take years to get that stuff.
But
and it might not even be that well organized. You get a little here and a little there and stuff like that. well-taught classes are organized, and they give you things to sort of build on each other, right?
So really,
So
it's a shortcut. But the question, the thing is, what you're talking about now, and is that you're talking more about like the American way, these big sets. Here in Europe, we have a lot of tiny, independent, where you're just immediately doing everything when we're working on the projects. Like you don't have to start with just a runner because you're going to be having all these positions to make it work. Or like you are creating your own stuff. Like you just immediately go out there and...
That's always good. That's always good. I think you learn by doing, of course. I mean, that's part of our film school is what we have students do is they make films. I mean, we have 9 weeks of classes each semester, and then everybody's making films. And even the first semester, which unfortunately, because of a visa thing, you missed, the first weekend, students go out and shoot. And then the third weekend, there's another shooting exercise. So, if you're making your own film, sure. But if you don't have somebody who's helping you, then, I mean, believe me, I see people applying to our school who send me YouTube or Vimeo links for things they've done. I made 2 or 3 short films, and I look at them, and they're not really films. They're like video clips, but they're not films. And so you really do need to have sort of an implicit instinct for stories if you don't have the training, and not everybody has that. There was a really smart kid from Boston who applied to our school a few years ago, and he, right after we reopened from COVID, and he was young, but he had already started doing these movies by himself with his brother and all this stuff, friends in Boston. And they were funny, but they were really kind of home movie style thing, but he had a sense of humor. And I thought, okay, great, I like people with a sense of humor. So he came to our school, and he made 2 really funny films with us, okay? And I hope he does well in the future. He's still young, so he has plenty of time. But it's a rough business. But yeah, he taught himself a lot. But when he got to school, he learned things he didn't know, and things that were the difference between amateur hour and something that looks sort of professional,
Can you give me an example of what he learned?
Well, I mean, bad acting, shaky cameras, funky sound, all that kind of stuff. But especially stories that were silly, that, went into silly ideas rather than took a good idea and made something really good with it, But also acting that was over the top and therefore no longer funny, So it's tricky with comedy, but he got funnier, and his stories were more sophisticated, and his humor more sophisticated, and then of course also technically the films were more proficient, So
I
all
can
of that
tell
stuff.
you from my experience, I've been writing my whole life. Everyone knows it, and I've never paid a great deal of attention to that. Like people at school would tell me that I have, a natural inkling to writing, but I knew I could write, and I loved writing, and I use it as a practice, as a therapy, as everything. It just was my escape from the world. And then I thought, okay, if I know how to write, I can write anything, like essays, I can write screenplays, I can write anything. And then my first encounter with a screenplay, and I still struggle with it, Carl knows more than anyone, that it's a very different kind of writing. It's a very different format. It's a very different, and it's also is intended for people who are very looking for different bits. Different professions have different bits in the screenplay that they rely on. So you need to know how to direct the attention of those people, how to not overwrite it, not direct on the page, not use all those grand, beautiful words. I know. I mean, I'm learning. But yes, and it's so very different. And no one is going to tell you this. Of course, you can have your experience in the industry first as a screenwriter. You write something, you show it to someone, and they probably wouldn't, go beyond the first page because they will see that you clearly have no idea what you're doing. So to me, that was very eye-opening, the way how
Yeah.
you structure it, how that it's not about, using all those beautiful words, or, it's more about like having a clear language, give instructions, and,
Yeah. Well,
fleshing out what you're trying to say.
yeah. There's an argument to be made though,
Mm.
that yeah, you want to keep things as clear and transparent as possible when you're reading, but it does also have to be fun to read.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's the balancing act, because that's why I like reading scripts of other people, because they do break rules that I talk about. Of course, rules are meant to be broken, but when you know why you're breaking them, right? So, so you can have fun writing. I mean, with the words you choose, writing a script to make it fun to read. What you don't want to do is bog down the reader, right? You want them to be able to picture the movie. That's the point, right? So sometimes you can add stuff that I say you're not supposed to add. I mean, like what somebody's thinking or something like that, because it's not something we can see, right? And the script is supposed to be the blueprint of what we're going to see, right? And hear, and that's it. But you can break those rules when it's serving the purpose of making it more fun to read, and making it more visual somehow, and more helping the reader imagine how it's going to look and what it's going to be like, and also getting in the head of the characters a little bit sometimes. I mean, if you read Breaking Bad scripts, Vince Gilligan had a lot of fun with those scripts. But that's the thing, is you get a series and everybody knows the characters already. So you can almost write a script as if you're telling your friends about what's happening. And it becomes more informal, sort of, in a way. And so it really depends. But when you're learning it in a class and in a school, I think it pays to sort of play by the rules, to learn the rules.
To learn the rules and then to break
Yeah.
them, as you said.
Then you can break them.
And the thing at your school, what I'm hearing is also, it's like having, we all know how important it is to have like mentors to learn from. As you say, it's a shortcut. Like if you're just in your own, if we would just exclude everything that everyone has done in this world, we would all be starting from zero again and again and again. And we wouldn't evolve. Like it would be horrendous. So we don't want that. At the same time, your school, it feels like you have the possibility, you have like multiple mentors in all the different areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small school, but we do have multiple teachers, all of whom are capable of being mentors. And, it's interesting. I mean, I teach directing, but we have another directing teacher as well, Stephen. And we come at things from a slightly different place, I mean, we don't always agree, which is okay. And it might confuse the students a bit, but that's okay.
That's good.
Yeah, and we have our cinematography teacher who students have taken to very warmly. He's one of my closest friends, and a great guy, and he knows his stuff, and he's funny, and so people who want to get into that side of things find him to be quite a helpful person, and then we have a great editing teacher who I unfortunately hasn't gotten as close to people because she's not around as much. But she's still really an interesting person with some successful career work and a lot of awards and things like that. So she knows her stuff. So yeah, and we have an acting teacher who's done some very cool stuff, and the students love her as well. So, but it's a small school. It's not like we have 100 faculty members,
Okay. So
And was it your intention? Because I think like then the school is small. It kind of is a family, right? And then the students get not only the education, but also the support, but also kind of the love, the energy part of it. Because I've been to different schools. I'm a life learner, and I've been to like small places and to auditoriums with like hundreds and hundreds of students where you've never had one-on-one time with a teacher, and it's a very different type of experience. Of course, you learn both ways because you adapt, but at the same time, I guess what I'm trying to ask, was it your intention? Did you want to make something that is gonna be like
Bigger?
small but meaningful? How did you start this school? That's the question.
Well, when I was working in Prague, I was the faculty chairman at the Prague Film School, which at that time was called PCFE. And they hired me to teach, and then they asked me to be the faculty chairman. And they had kind of difficulties with students the year before who were upset and stuff, like a student revolt. And so they were smart enough to bring in new teachers to sort of, revise their school. And I was one of them. And so then they asked me to sort of redo the program. And so I did. And also help with the faculty hirings and firings and stuff like that. And run faculty meetings and stuff. And, so I was sort of running that school because the guys who owned this school weren't filmmakers. They were businessmen. They were very good businessmen, actually, but they weren't filmmakers. So they needed somebody like me to sort of coordinate things and create this sort of program. And so I saw, now they were really good at marketing, and we had about 50 students a year, okay, in the one-year program. And a lot of students came from India, but we had students from all over the world, Finland, all the corners of the globe. And that was very interesting for me. I had, of course, been to film school, and I had worked at other schools, but this international school thing was very cool. When in around 2008 or 7 or 8, I proposed to them, because I had already lived in Italy for 10 years before that I could maybe try to open a branch in Rome. And so I actually flew to Rome to talk to people at Cinecittà and some other places to see about that idea. And then before anything really came of it, I ended up leaving that school. Okay, and I had just made a film in Prague, and I went around for about a year to various film festivals. So I stopped teaching. And then after another year, I said, let's leave Prague. We've done Prague 5 years in Prague. It's enough. And so we moved to the States, and I thought it would be good for me to get teaching experience at the university level in the States. So I was teaching in Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania, at Drexel University. And so I had that experience, both the film school experience and the film department experience at universities, and then also at American University of Rome after, when I came back to Italy. And, the problem with being in a big school with like 100 people, students in a class or more, big auditoriums, like you said, is there is no it's good. It's okay for film studies. You're going to screen a film and talk about it from a microphone on stage, and okay. But to teach film, I did teach screenwriting and directing in Drexel and at AUR. But I had 15, 16 students in a class, no more. So basically, when I said I want to do this program in Rome, when I moved back to Rome after Savannah, I said, okay, let's do it. And I already had my partner here, Stefano, the administrator partner, who I'd known since 2012. And we decided to start the school. We actually created the school in 2014, but we started operating in 2016. And it was you have to start small. It's not like we said we're going to stay tiny forever, but you start small and you see where it goes. And so we started with just short courses. In 2016, screenwriting course, directing course, acting course, and stuff like that. And then in 2017, I had the first, in the spring, I ran the first semester that we ran. And then in this fall of 2017, we started our one-year program. So it sort of grew. And then, of course, we were cut down with COVID. We had to shut down.
Yeah.
Students were actually out shooting when the edict came down from the government that everything had to close. And I had to call the students literally on the phone, say, you got to bring everything back. We're locking everything up. We got to lock it up. And that was it. And we had to cancel the rest of that year. And then the next year I ran just online classes myself for, a year. And then we reopened in the fall of 21. So with masks still.
Crazy, huh?
It was tricky, but as far as like, should we grow? I mean, we'd like to grow a bit. We're trying actually to get another facility in the Matatoyo.
Oh, that would be cool.
I know we've been working on it for quite a
I
while.
have no idea what you guys are talking about, but it sounds amazing.
No, the Matatoyo, Eva, is what was the old slaughterhouse in Rome, and it's right across the street from our school, and it's now the home for a photography museum, gallery, a school of music, a school of architecture, and it's owned by Pala Expo, I think it's called, which is, the same people have like these big arenas and stuff like that. But it was basically a subsidiary company of the city of Rome. Okay, so it's the Comune of Rome. But dealing with anything that's sort of municipal is like the most insane bureaucracy. And they have all the rules, and Stefano deals with this stuff. I don't deal with this stuff at all. I mean, but we're trying to get a space inside the Matatoyo for the future. Maybe to complement the one we have now or to replace the one we have now, depending on how big the space we can get is. But I'd like to have, as many students as possible, but I wouldn't have more than 16 in a classroom ever.
Yeah.
That
So
makes
it's
sense.
high quality then. Because if you fill the room and just fill and fill, like you won't be able to give them the time they need and to support them.
No, exactly. And I mean, ultimately, you get more students, you have to have more teachers, you have to have more equipment. So it's kind of a balancing act of managing all this stuff, to make sure that you're not shortchanging anything. We know we have what we need right now with the size that we're at, but we have to constantly make sure the equipment's okay, because students handling equipment means it's going to break or get lost. And so, I just got a list sent to me the other day from one of the students saying, this is broken, this is missing, this is, and I said, okay.
Was that you?
No, it was, it was Nicole, and she did us a favor. No, I asked her to do it. No, because if I don't know that something's wrong or missing or broken, then they're going to end up needing it.
Yeah.
So I need to know that. So with the time I need to get it replaced or fixed, so we're working on that. But we do give personal attention to everybody. And I mean, I love that. I get a buzz from this.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of your group, Valeria. I mean, it's a great group this year.
Oh, thank you.
Very talented sweetheart of people. Everybody's really good person. There's no negative energy. People get impatient, they get tired, they get cranky, but
It's
nobody's
understandable.
mean.
It
Nobody's
happens
mean,
in the industry
right?
as well.
Yeah. No, everybody's sort of pulling for each other, and that's the best thing. When I interview people who want to come to our school, I do these Zoom calls like now, but and one of the things I always ask and mention is how important it is that that they come ready to be generous with each other, and that that everybody relies on everybody. Not only in the films, but in classes. If you're sick one day, somebody covers your notes for you and stuff. I mean, everybody has to be looking out for each other. And when that happens, it's fantastic. Like you said, it's like a family. And when it doesn't happen, it changes everything. If all of a sudden one person introduces bad vibes into the situation, it makes you not want to go to school or not want to work on the film, or it changes everything. So we can't have that.
Yes.
And luckily we don't.
I also want to say, just because, it's worth mentioning. I already told you that I really appreciated all of our calls because you've been amazing throughout this whole process. Since our first call, I felt, connected to you. I felt that that's the place I want to be because you made it very, I don't know, friendly for me. You made it very warm place. And you supported me throughout because I've struggled a lot with visa and I struggled, it's like, you don't know what's happening for 5 months. You already have your hopes down. You don't know if it's going to happen at some point, but you've been supporting me throughout this whole process, and you've been checking up on me, and sending me all the positive messages and vibes and updates from the school. So I really, really appreciated that, and I think that's one
Well,
of
you
the
deserved it.
strong points of the program, to have someone like you who have all the experience of the world, but also people skills, and also a warm heart, and open to students, open to people, open to support, open to understand. That's amazing, honestly.
Well, thanks. Thank you. I mean, it's nice to hear that, believe me. And I do know some people who are great screenwriters and great directors, and they're lousy teachers, And I know some teachers who are wonderful teachers, but they've never sold a script or made a film. So we're always trying to make sure we have a little, we have both. Because I think it's important that you guys are getting taught by people who actually do this stuff, first of all. And second, that know how to teach,
If you're thinking about going to film school, definitely check Carl's school in Rome. We'll have the link in the show notes. It's worth it. Check it out. If you think like, oh, I always wanted to go to Rome, definitely go there. Talk to him and see if it's a fit for you. And as he said, it's a shortcut. Like, why not learn from amazing human beings and creatives that have done it their whole life or for a long time, have a lot of experience. So I love that. And where I want to go to now is, and I'm doing this because you travel a lot. I know, like, travel not in sense, but you've lived in different places in the world. And that means it's like all these different countries and industries and like filmmaking cultures. So how, like, what is there a huge difference? And if so, how in the filmmaking cultures? If you look at like Prague, Rome, New York, LA, or is it way much more similar than we think? Like, how is that?
I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to know what you think. But my feeling is it's pretty much the same everywhere. It's just a different scale, maybe. Like, I mean, you can do independent films in Prague. You can do independent films in New York, in Mumbai, in Rio, in LA, even. Or you can make giant movies anywhere, basically. They do. I mean, they don't just shoot big movies in LA. They shoot big movies everywhere now. In fact, LA is suffering because a lot of films are being shot somewhere else. But culture-wise, there's a difference. Obviously. I mean, American culture is much more infantile in a way, isn't it? I mean, they like explosions and action and genres, and but they also have some very sophisticated films. So it's a stereotype to say that, but the films that make a lot of money aren't necessarily the films that win the Oscars or the Golden Globes. In fact, usually they don't. The films, once in a while they do, like an Avatar or something, but or Titanic, but big action films they usually win for visual effects and stuff like that, but they don't win Best Picture, sort of. So one thing is the business of film, and the other thing is the art of film. And the art of film is pretty similar everywhere. Ultimately, films that are European, they don't have the budgets to make big, epic films. Once in a while, you get a French film that spent, $50 million or something. But most films in Europe are made with, $1 million or less, or 10 million at the most, or 15 maybe. But 15 million in Hollywood is a low budget film. So it's the scale that's different. And when you don't have tons of money, your films have to be more intimate, right? They have to be focused on more of the human story and less on the spectacle, right? So, um, so you have more, I guess, inclination to make artistic films. In Europe, the other thing is, in Europe, films are financed differently. They're financed generally with money from the local governments or state governments or European commissions, and so they're publicly funded ultimately, and with some pre-sales to television markets and sometimes now the streamers. But American films are all private financing, especially is their banks, investment funds, equity funding, all that kind of stuff. So people they have to believe they're going to make money on the film. So the choices of how films get financed in the United States is much more industrial. Okay. So that's the biggest difference. Now, there's a difference between New York and LA in the film world, too. I mean, you think about the early Scorsese films out of New York, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver. But Mean Streets was very much a New York production. Once he already went to Taxi Driver, he had California money, studio money in the film. So it's different. The vibe is different. New York is a real city. Los Angeles is a bunch of little places connected by freeways. It's a different lifestyle. Everybody's in their car all the time. But Prague, Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia at once upon a time has a huge history of great films. From Milos Forman, Jiří Menzel, all these great directors and cinematographers. But that changed. Of course, they had to make their films under the communist regime, so they had to be really clever, sort of the way the Iranians now do, where you have to watch out for the censors, so you have to be very clever about the kinds of stories you tell, not to get arrested or, have your films, censored. And so they developed some really sophisticated humor, dark sort of humor in their films. Now in the Czech Republic, the film business, they still have their sort of local filmmakers, the children of the famous filmmakers, or new people coming up who are good, and they have a very good film school. The national film school there, FAMU, that's a good film school for Czech people in Czech. They have an international department, which is okay, I think, but not as important as their regular Czech film department, the regular film school for Czech people in Czech language. But the real stuff that happens in Czech Republic that supports the studios, the Barrandov studio, are the big movies that come in. The big James Bond type things, or Angelina Jolie picture or something like that come.
The second one, right? The first one was in Budapest. They filmed the shot, and I think the second one in Prague, if I'm not mistaken.
Very. You know more than me then. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
They shoot a lot of big movies there, Barrandov Studios, and it's a good facility and famous, and there are these companies that handle sort of service production for these big Hollywood and international co-productions that come in to shoot in Prague as a runaway production site. They have tax credits and stuff that make it appealing.
Yeah, we do.
And but they also have some really great technicians and actors. I mean, when I shot my film in Prague, the thing that blew my mind was how great the actors are. I mean, they're great, and they're great in terms of their naturalism, but also their technical craft skills are incredible, and they're really fun to work with. So yeah.
May I ask you something about that? Is that like, how was it with your producing? Like, you produced your own film, am I right?
Yeah. Well, I had a producer who wanted to help me produce it, but I didn't want to wait for him. He was trying to raise more money for the film for me. And I said, that's great. Yeah, Phil. There's a guy named Phil Whaley. He's a great guy. He produces a lot of stuff in Prague. He's a British guy. He produced a lot of stuff in Prague, these big movies that come in. And he read my script and he really loved it. And he wanted to produce it. And I said, great, Phil. Can we shoot it this summer? He says, oh, no, I don't know about this summer. I said, well, I'm shooting it this summer.
I love
he
this
ended up.
boldness.
Me
It's
too.
the decision. Do you have to be like that? Otherwise, you're not getting anything.
You can
done.
wait forever.
And we're talking about the wrong Mr. One, of course.
The Wrong Mr. Johnson.
Johnson,
called,
sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And it's a romantic comedy, and it was a film that I had originally written in Italy and thought originally to make here, and then I left Italy, and then all these years later, I was in Prague, and I thought this makes way more sense in Prague, and I wrote the script because it's about mistaken identity that comes from the lack of communication between people who don't understand each other, and it's about other things too, but that's sort of the mechanism of the film. And so I wrote the script in about a month, and I basically decided I have free time from the middle of July to September. This is when I have to shoot the film, and so that's it. And I just found a way to do it. My favorite. I said this to you guys a lot of times. My favorite films are the ones that get made.
I love that.
True.
That is a beautiful way to see it. There's so many films out there where you, please, our dear listeners, those of you, if you're watching, like, don't wait. If you have it in you, go out there, make it. So, Carl, how did you then self-produce? How did you wrote it, you directed, I think you did, right?
Yeah, I directed it.
And produced it. How did you do that?
I found a couple people who gave me a little bit of money, and we made deferment deals with people. Everybody who worked on the film signed a deal memo, which they agreed to take very, very little money in cash on this, for their work at the moment, in exchange for more money later if and when we sold the film. And so deferments, and so it's kind of common. I knew about deferments back from 1982 when I worked with my Cuban buddies in New York who were making a feature called Crossover Dreams that I was an associate producer of and assistant director, and they made deferment deals with all of us and also the actors, and so I learned about that method of so the negative cost of the film was way more than the money we had in our pockets to make the film. Basically, I was helping a friend of mine. He had a daughter who's 9 years old who was very precocious and very smart and very funny and very cute. And he wanted everything for her. And he had some money. He had a company. He serviced private aircraft. That was his, so the Rolling Stones fly into Prague, and he services their jet kind of. So that's so he had some money, and he had partners with money also, and so he was always treating his daughter like she was the Queen of Sheba, and so.
Sorry, I just have to say I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he loved her to death, and she was a really smart, wonderful kid, and so one day he was looking for somebody to shoot this sort of pilot he wanted to do with her, which was about things that are fun to do for kids in Prague with her as the hostess. So I started shooting all these things with her as a favor to him, and so one day he wanted to shoot her snowboarding up in the mountains of Czech Republic near the Polish border, and so we get in his car and we drive out there. Now I'm not a guy. I don't ski. I mean, I used to ice skate. I used to play ice hockey when I was a kid, but I never skied. I don't snowboard. So there I am with my shoes, running down a snowy slope while she's snowboarding, and shooting handheld with no stabilizers and stuff like that.
Wait a second. You were running backwards then?
Running backwards,
no,
yeah,
with
down
the
a
camera,
hill.
running backwards, and she's whoa.
Thankfully she's going like this, not like this. But anyway, so then the end of the day, we're driving back to Prague, and I'm in the front seat, the little girl's in the back, and I'm sitting in. So my friend says, "So what are you up to besides teaching?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to make a movie." And he said, "Well, what's the movie?" And I gave him the elevator pitch, which was really good actually. And he just said, "That sounds fantastic." And I said, yeah. He says, well, how much does it cost to make a movie? I said, a lot of money. And he goes, well, how much do you need? And I said, well, I don't think you can give me all that. He says, well, would 12,000 help? And I said, yeah, of course. So he promised me that 12,000. He said, and by the way, my buddy, my partner, I bet I can convince him to put 12. I said, that's fantastic. So all of a sudden I knew I had 24,000 euros. And so I started the pre-production the next day, basically. I started casting the next day. And I, luckily, there was this girl that I knew, who's a fantastic person, actress named Daniela, who was also at the time married to a fantastic actor named Hinek. And I wanted Daniela to play one of the roles. I wanted Hinek to play. As soon as I saw him, I said, he's perfect for the sort of terrible boyfriend in the film. And
he's so good.
And so then Hinek knew a girl who was probably the most famous up-and-coming Czech actress at the time, a girl named Klada Isova. And he asked me if I would be interested in Klada for the main part. And I checked out her work. I said, yeah, absolutely, she'd be great. And so she came and she auditioned, and she was wonderful. And I cast her, and all of a sudden I had her. And then I was living in a place in Prague, in the center, not far from the National Theater, in what's called the New City, which is only 600 years old as opposed to 2,000 or whatever. And in my building, which was sort of part of an old monastery, was a neighbor who's also a very famous actress, singer, named Lucia Vondrachkova. And she was a friend at this point, neighbor, and she really liked me, and I told her about it, and she agreed to play a secondary role in the film, because nobody would have ever cast her as a prostitute like I did. And so she was game. And it was fun because she had like 4 different looks in the film and stuff, 5 different looks actually. And so she had fun with all the wardrobe stuff and stuff. Anyway, so I had a really good cast. Okay, I had a fantastic cast. In fact, Hinek has become one of the top actors in Czech Republic since that movie. Anyway, so once I had that money, I was also still teaching at the Prague Film School, and I had my equipment, I had it, and I had former students who stuck around to work. They graduated in May, and I told them we were going to make this movie in July, and they stuck around. And so one of my students, Hunter, I hired as a production manager. I hired Leopold from Vienna as a gaffer, and another guy as a grip. And my wife did the costumes, and we had a Ukrainian girl who worked with us, worked with her to help as a costume assistant. And, I had a great makeup artist who Hunter was friends with, and who's actually a special effects makeup artist, a very important one, but who came to do regular makeup for us. And then I had to hire another makeup artist because Claudia didn't like him. So I had to have another makeup artist just for her. But, we managed. And at a certain point, we were, about 3 weeks out of the 4.5 weeks of shooting, and we're running out of money, even with all the deals that we made. And by the way, I had an assistant director who was bilingual, who Hunter found, a guy named Otto, who was great and helped us find some amazing locations for free, including 2 5-star hotels and the airport. Okay, so all of a sudden we had this huge production value of the film without any money, and so we were running out of money. We were shooting at the airport, and we were in the parking lot shooting the scene in the parking lot at the airport. And I called up my buddy, who gave me the first batch of money, and I said, "Hey, we're running out of money." And an hour later, he drives up in his car, rolls down his window, and hands me a paper bag filled with 12,000 more.
I need a friend like that.
Yeah, we all do. We all need friends like that.
That's pretty cool.
That's a
Can
good
we have
friend.
friends like that?
Yeah.
But
So-
talking about friends like that. you had been working, you were supporting him, you were taking, it was not like you helped him film something which was very important to him. And that's the beauty of networking and seeing each other and working together, is that exactly this will evolve. This is like Valeria and me, like meeting each other and us working. And now we have this beautiful podcast that we just love so much. And, and that's the thing. Networking, some people misunderstand it, or they're like, oh, he's so lucky. There was just this guy that gave him money. No. You put in the hours. You invested in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's networking.
Yeah. And then when we sold the film, he got all his money back.
That's the best.
So it was amazing. But you see, that's the thing. What makes me most proud about that particular film is that it started from nothing, and had I not done it that way, it might never have happened. And then we made a film. It wasn't supposed to be God's gift to filmmaking, but it was a cute film, and it sold. And they still show it on Czech television. Nova TV is the network. They show it like 6 times a year, and they've been showing it since 2008. So that's 17 years, and their license is still good for another couple of years.
Congratulations.
So yeah, I mean, that's just really nice. We had a bunch of dramas that happened later. I realized our sound guy was an idiot, and he fucked up the sound. Sorry, I don't know if I can use foul
Yes,
language.
you can.
Okay.
No worries.
He screwed up our sound. I got into the editing room with my editor, who, by the way, the editor I got on board after we shot everything. I didn't have an editor until, but I found this guy who was great, but also perfectly located between my house and my school. So very handy. But he was also a really good guy and spoke English, and a bit of a crazy guy, but wonderful editor. And he looked at all the footage and said, yeah, okay, I'll do this. But we have a problem with the sound. In fact, I didn't realize it because I had never really gone back and checked everything because we didn't have time for it. And but we get into, I'm listening to the sound on his monitors and his computer setup, his editing station. And it's like, So we realized, and I asked him, I said, Michal, how much of the film has this problem? He says, about 70%.
Oh my God.
So at that point, we realized we had to go back and loop a lot of stuff, okay, to ADR, additional dialogue recording. And so I had to call the actress, starting with her. And in the meantime, she had been involved in a kind of personal, let's say, not scandal, but something that made the newspapers a story, because she had fallen in love with a guy who was married, who was a well-known filmmaker himself, and the son of a very famous film guy. Okay, so it was a bit of a, so they kind of hold up, the two of them, and I'm not sure exactly why, but I always felt, and I was probably right, that he didn't want her to help me finish my movie. Okay. So when I called her to come and do the looping, she said no. Her own movie, her own performance. I don't know, it was always sort of mysterious to me. But so I realized I had to get another actress to do her voice for the movie. So I found another actress, thanks to my friend Daniela again, who knew all the actors in Prague. And I met this girl, Susanna Kanarova, who came in, and she had a voice very similar to Clara, and she's a wonderful actress. And she said, well, I have to ask Clara if it's okay with her. And she asked Clara if it's okay with her, and Clara was like, yeah, I don't care. So Susanna came to the studio, and I had to then do the whole movie. I couldn't just do the 70%. I had to do the whole movie at that
obviously
point.
a different voice.
Yeah, and so I had to call all the actors back and fly the two guys back from the United States, find an apartment for them, individual apartments, and travel and accommodation and all that, and the studio time. And all the Czech actors as well. And then we had to, once we had all that stuff recorded, do all the Foley and all the other stuff, Dolby Mix. And so all of a sudden, the film cost double. Okay.
Ouch.
So I had to raise more cash. Okay. I couldn't go back to my friend. He was tapped out. Okay. So I wasn't sure how we were going to do this. We lost about 5 months looking for money. And then my editor convinced his brother to put the money.
Oh my God.
Wow. I'm impressed that your stamina and the strength, this inner strength that you have, and this love for filmmaking is very obvious. Because even that, having that, a lot of people would have maybe given up. But you
Well,
didn't.
how can you?
And
Well,
that's
you owe it to all
amazing.
the other people who work on your
love-
movie.
Yes, I love that. That's exactly what it is. Wow.
There's no choice. I mean, what
Right.
else? You know, it would be sad if it took forever and never happened. That would be terrible. We got lucky. And this guy got his money back too. So, you know, everybody, and all the deferments got paid, by the way. In fact, one of my actors is this guy, Nick Mancuso. He's, you know, he's a very experienced guy. He's in movies with Sophia Loren and Kim Basinger, and he's a TV series where he was the star. And he's, you know, an older guy, and he was a friend I had met in Montreal a long time ago, but we had never worked together. And I asked him to come and be in this movie, and he loves Prague. So he said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And he also wasn't often doing comedy, so he wanted to have some fun with that. When I made a deferment deal with him, it was, you know, a significant amount of money deferred, because all I was giving him was like $100 a week or something, you know, nothing. So, so when I sent him the money after we sold the film, he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it.
Oh, I love
He said, Carl, in my 40 years in the business, it's the first time anybody's ever paid me a deferment. Okay.
Oh my God, I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. That is so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, he was very shocked. He said, Carl, I'm in shock. I'm grateful and I'm in shock.
Now, I want to work with you now. Like, I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the
It's
way
good
you-
karma.
It is
It's good.
beautiful karma, and it's beautiful
Yeah.
the way you see it, and that loyalty and honesty. I love it. That's
Yeah, I mean, I could have taken that money and bought a house.
exactly.
But I
Exactly.
didn't. No, it would have been a bad news. Would have been a cursed house.
Oh yeah.
No, yeah. So anyway, we always hope the next thing will actually help you buy the house, you know. But this one, at least the film got made and seen, and you know, some people like it, and that's all you can say. I mean, it's okay. Anyway, everything you do is different. Every project you work on has different issues, different reasons for it, different challenges, different karma, different fate. You know, there's the first feature that I made was in Italy, and it wasn't supposed to be the first feature. I was supposed to have done a couple others before that, but it's the way it worked out. And I was in Rome, and I was friends with this guy who had a distribution company, still exists, called Lucky Red, and he passed away. He had AIDS. He passed away, I think, early 2000. But he was a fantastic guy, American guy here in Rome, with red hair. That's why his company is called Lucky Red. And he really liked me, and he supported a script that I was writing with one of Fellini's writers, a guy named Bernardino Zapponi, and who I asked to work with me on this project. And we were friends, and we wrote the script together. It was sort of, I guess, sort of supernatural romantic film sort of thing. And still a movie I'd like to make, by the way, one day. But Kim at Lucky Red wanted to do it, and he could have done it. He could have produced it. The only thing is, he had his company he shared with a partner, a guy named Andrea, who's still around and still runs Lucky Red. And Andrea wasn't so keen on it, and the deal fell through because of that. And Kim felt bad, and I felt bad, and Bernardino felt bad, and And so I wrote a script as a reaction to that, okay, called Another Movie. And I wrote this script called Another Movie, which is about a filmmaker from America who goes to Italy to make a film. And
Sounds
and yeah, and his friend invites him, some friend he knew from way back from film school and who's in Italy invites him. And when he gets to Italy, his friend is nowhere to be found, okay? Turns out he's hiding from the police. And he's, when he finally hooks up with his friend, which is sort of kind of inspired by The Third Man, where, Joseph Cotton's looking for Orson Welles. He finally finds him, and his friend is convinced they're still going to make a movie. He goes, "How are you going to make a movie when you're hiding from the cops?" He goes, "Oh, cops? We don't have cops here, And so they have this plot to steal a painting from this asshole producer and use the money from the painting to produce the film. Okay, so that's what the film is about. And I convinced Kim, let's make this movie, and Andres going, yeah, it's okay, but let's not give him all the money. If you have a partner who puts in some of the money, like a quarter of the budget, then we'll do it. And they're distributors, the producer, distributor. So my friend who had originally invited me to Rome, he was now married with a very wealthy woman. And he convinced her to put up that quarter of the budget. And so he became a producer, she became a producer. And now Lucky Red had no choice but to produce my film. So they did. And we made that film. And that was a miracle also, the way that happened. And that Italo shot that film, by the way. And I asked Italo, my cinematography teacher, I asked him to also help me with the script. And he did. And it's not like he wrote the script, but he helped me with the script. So he shares the screenwriting credit. Yeah. And that's another thing, I always tell the students, make sure you credit people. Yeah. Give them the benefit of the doubt, even if they only did a quarter of the work. Give them half the credit. It doesn't matter. Yeah, who cares?
It's important. But interesting that the more I learn about filmmaking, the more I believe that every movie is a miracle. Because otherwise, without this, they won't be made.
It's very hard. Yeah. It's really hard. I mean, I'm trying to make a film now. Well, many, but one of them should be easy. I mean, I have one of the greatest Italian actors ever who wants to do this movie, who's given me his letter of intent and everything, and doesn't seem to be helping. The script's really good. The actor's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, for God's sake, and the Italian, there is no real Italian film industry. That's the problem. There's no industrial approach to filmmaking. It's like, it's very whimsical. It's like, depends who's hot today. They don't care who's great and how that project with that person could be successful. They don't think like that. So it's a challenge. It's very frustrating. And if I find somebody, I still persist. His agent calls me once a month asking what's happening. When that happens, you have something good. Somebody is into it, So you can't give up. But it's sometimes, something else comes along, takes its place, and it sits on a shelf for a while. It's hard.
I don't know why, but I have to tell you this. I'm sometimes a little bit of a witch. I have the feeling this is going to be made, this film. I have no idea why I'm saying this. But there's something around you and your energy and you not giving up, you always finding new ways, new amazing human beings that they're fully integrated and are part of the team, and you see them like that. And I think that is the plus. So now what you are looking for now is you are looking for investors. Let's just use this here. Let's use this platform. Let's manifest this film.
Oh yeah, thanks. Okay,
What
sure.
is it that you are looking for now, for example? Like, what can you tell us? Like, what is...
Well, the film is a dark comedy. I guess if it was in Hollywood, I would have to add with a heart. Uh, um, and the actor's Giancarlo Giannini, who is amazing. He's 81 years old now, I believe. Still very, very vital, vibrant, funny, smart, crazy, and perfect for this. In fact, when I sent the script to his agent, I called him. The agent knew me from the past. His father was a famous agent, and the son took over the agency, and they know me. And so I said, hey, can you read? Can you get Giancarlo to read this? And he goes, oh, Giancarlo only reads things with an offer. In other words, you have to make the offer. So in other words, it has to be a film ready to go kind of thing. I said, okay, well, will you read it, please? And he said, yeah, okay, I'll read it. So he read it. And a week later, he calls me up and he goes, Maurizio, the character, is Giancarlo. Okay. And I said, yeah, no, that's why I sent it to you. And he goes, and I said, can you get Giancarlo to read it now? He goes, I'll do my best. A week later, he calls me. He goes, Giancarlo loves it. He wants to do it. I said, okay, great. Can you send me a letter to that effect? He goes, yes. That afternoon at 4:00, I had the letter. Okay. So at that point, this is over a year ago, by the way. At that point, I started trying to get people on board. And I was quickly finding out, because to make a film with an 81-year-old actor, you can't be shooting out of the back of a van, okay? No. You have to have things comfortable. Yeah. And it's not just Giancarlo in the film. He plays the main character, but it's, there's a couple of young actors, and there's two wives of his in this story. The first one dies on page 10, and the next one comes along around page 40. And so the first one is an older woman. We're thinking, because I have a French friend of mine who's interested to be a partner on the project. So, like a minority partner. So I thought, okay, well, let's maybe get a French actress who knows Giancarlo, to play the first wife, like a cameo. So, we have that possibility, like a Fanny Ardant or somebody like that to come and do that. And then for the second wife, there's an actress who's American who I know, and she lives in Florence with her Italian husband and her two daughters. And, she splits her time between New York and Florence. And she was in Goodfellas, and her name is Debbie Mazar. And Debbie's really funny, and she's great and super energetic, and she's a wonderful actress and hilarious person. And I sent her the script, and I was actually walking around in the museum at the Campidoglio, the city hall of Rome, and they have a very beautiful museum with some Caravaggios and other things. And I was actually standing right next to the Caravaggio painting. My phone rings, and it's Debbie telling me she wants to do it. Okay. So I had Debbie. I can get Fanny. We were saying, okay, who are we going to get for the two young Italians in the film? That's not hard once we know we're going, but that's the kind of thing we need to know, have dates before you get them involved. So this was the pitch. We have a little proposal thing ready, and I did a budget, and I thought, what's the least we can do it for? What would be the most would be nice to have and stuff. And it's a range. But it's real money. It's not like, $20,000 or something. This is real, millions. And so you need 2, 3, 4 million to make a film like this. And if you don't have that, you can't make it. And you can't get Giancarlo Giannini. I mean, even if he loves it, he still needs to get a certain amount of money and have certain securities and safeties and comforts and time. It's kind of like when you're shooting with a child or an older person. you can't push them more than a certain amount of hours each day, which means the schedule's longer and stuff like that. So all of these practical things come into play when you're sitting and figuring out how much you need to make a film like this. And, then what do you do? Where do you go? Well, there's 2 or 3 companies that are able to make a film like this here. Okay. So there's not a lot of options.
Oh, you mean in Italy?
Yeah, in Italy. And, the problem is that Giancarlo is not seen as bankable, in spite of the fact that he's a star, a major star, because he's old. And it is a shame, but it's how they see things. It's wrong, because actually this is a film that might sell better outside Italy than inside Italy, even though it'll be shot in Italian. So it's just a lack of understanding on the part of some of these people who make films here. I mean, you go, why did they put the money into this film and not that film? And it's impossible to answer that question most of the time. And the fact is that you can't even get people to read. I mean, we've been trying, like I was talking about, trying to get a place in the Matatoio for the school, just getting people to answer your calls and respond. There's one company that's the company owned by the kids of Sergio Leone, the famous director. Sure. It's called Leone Group, and the Leone Group is an important company here. They produce stuff, they distribute stuff, and good things. They've been producing films of this guy Verzi, who's a wonderful director, and here in Italy, and so they do good stuff. It's not like they're cheesy outfit. They're good. But getting them to read and listen to anything other than the normal things they do. I'm an outsider. I'm an American guy in Italy. Yes, I've made films here before this. People know who I am. But
You've been around for so long. You're still...
I know, but I'm not Sorrentino. I'm not Guadagnino. I'm not Verzi. And these companies just do those. And they don't do anything else.
Question.
So it's difficult.
A question. Couldn't this be some film, couldn't you work with production from the States? Because this sounds like a film they would love in America.
Yeah, but they don't do things that aren't in English.
Oh, this is not in English. Oh, this is Italian. It's going to be in the, okay.
I mean, there's a little bit of English at some point when he has to speak English with his second wife at one point. But that's it.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, that's a good point.
No, it's America is incredibly provincial when it comes to doing things in Europe. I mean, yes, they'll do a big European film if Spielberg is in it, or if it's about the Holocaust or something like that. They might go shooting in Poland or something like that. But again, if it's a sort of a director with a huge history, a Wim Wenders wants to do something or something, then you might get an American company on board for something like that. It's a tough one. What I was hoping to do, and I'm still trying, is to get Italian producers who live in Los Angeles involved, because they'll have an understanding of what this film could be as an Italian film, but without being as provincial as most of the Italians in Italy when it comes to this. So that was my hope. The only sad thing about that is that there's not very many of those either. There's just a few.
And the route of the streaming platforms like, Netflix or something like that.
Well, you need to have a production company that has a relationship with them.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because they're not going to... And Netflix nowadays isn't sort of the place to do one-stop shopping for your production needs. You have to put a deal together with Netflix and others. They're not going to take all the risk themselves anymore like they might have 5 years ago.
They did, right, but they're not doing that anymore.
No. Now you need 3 or 4, Canal Plus and this and Ride Play or Sky or something to come in as well, which is possible, but you need the production entity to bring it to them, who they have a relationship with already. That's the challenge. It's not impossible, and we're working on it, but it's taken much longer than it should. and it might or might not happen. But I appreciate your witch positive
Witch energy.
energy.
My witch thing here, and to my beautiful audience and our audience here, Valeria, that if you're listening and or watching,
You have a lot of money.
and you are
friends.
a wonderful kick-ass producer.
Yeah.
Just saying. I feel.
Well,
like
I hope you have that audience.
I want to say something. It's on Tuesday we have our last class with you, and you shared a beautiful piece of advice that I think was a perfect note to stay with us, and it definitely resonated with me, and stayed with us after class. We in fact discussed it with the guys.
Oh, good.
And it was about not waiting for the happy calls, because yes, there are moments that they're incoming. There are moments that long moments of silence. And in those moments, you gotta feel them. You gotta live your life. You gotta have a little joy, or a lot of joy, elsewhere. And then you bring this joy and this experience into your work, and not the other way around.
Exactly.
And it's logical, but at the same time, when you pointed it out, that all made sense. It's part of you, because you do bring joy from the life that you are living. And I feel like being in Italy, coming to Italy, to live in Italy, to, spend your life here is a part of it, right?
Yeah, I guess. It's, excuse me a second. It's, just a second, sorry.
Sure. No worries.
Okay, I'm not used to doing this. I think it's all sort of tied up together. I mean, I could be happy in different places, I think, but I did choose, at one point in 2013, I was still in Philadelphia teaching at Drexel, and I was teaching a lot of classes there, but I was getting paid not so good. And at a certain point, somebody left, and there was a better job description open, and everybody who I was teaching with was going, Carl, this is yours if you want it, kind of thing. And so I thought, okay, well, what's that? Like, I don't know, $70,000 a year to teach full time at Drexel forever. And I went home and I told Carmen, let's go back to Italy. And I turned down the job, and we moved a month later, and that was it. It's like, enough. You got to be where you got to be. Life is short, and you got to do what you want to do. So that makes me happy. But you get joy from different things. Depends on who you are and what you like and stuff. But I gave you that advice because it's true. I mean, in this business, if you're sitting around waiting for success to be happy, you're missing your life in the process. It's like John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, right? So you gotta just make something of your life, enjoy your life, find happiness in your life, not from your work. Of course, if you're doing the work, it makes you happy. That's a given. If you're doing something you love. But as a filmmaker, there's so much downtime and waiting time and disappointment and rejection, and that you shouldn't be counting on that. You gotta have a life, and then if you have a life, then you can share that in your work, right? So I'm glad you guys were talking about it afterwards, because I couldn't tell how it was, taken by you. I mean, Daniel came up to me and thanked me afterwards, but he's the only one. Everybody else is out the door. So I had no idea that it actually had any impact.
No, it did. It landed.
Good.
We spoke with Matteo and with Nicole, and I think with Nicole, because she has, more experience, and she had her fair share of disappointments. In particular, it resonated. And with me as well. Maybe I'm the beginning filmmaker, but, other parts of my life, it's kind of universal. It can be applied to any profession, anything,
of course,
to life.
Yeah. It's just that people who make films tend to be very blindered, you know, and driven, and they think, you know, they have to get that Oscar before they're happy, kind of thing.
Yes.
You know,
That's a trap.
so yeah, it is a trap. It is. By the way, where are you from, Eva? You're from Iceland,
I'm
or
from
what?
Iceland, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, with the name.
With the Icelandic
and
name, yeah.
yeah, daughter. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you ever see The Player?
I did, yeah.
You remember Greta Skaki's character was Icelandic.
Oh, well, we are amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just put it out there. Icelandic people.
Well, I'm a big fan of Björk.
Me
Always
too.
was. Yeah,
Me
she's
too.
amazing.
She is amazing and gorgeous music.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Iceland at some point. I haven't been there.
Then let me know, because
yeah.
if you need any, advice or any
Tips,
questions or tips
yeah.
or whatever, just
Absolutely.
give me
well,
a
when the
call.
time comes.
Definitely.
Thank
give
you
me a
very
call.
much for that.
And
So what?
sorry,
Sorry,
say,
go ahead.
say.
No, you.
I just want to say
You got
thank you so much for your precious time. We are
Yes.
this has been amazing and it's beautiful. And I
Well,
so
thanks to
much,
you guys.
so much to learn from you, and just this like this not giving up and having a life outside of it that gives you energy and joy, and at the same time, because of that, you can have joy when you are, and bring that into your filmmaking, bring that into your writing. Even as you said, you got frustrated and then you wrote a film about it. And you're using your life fully. And I think that is so important. So thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
think thank you very much. I just want to maybe say one thing now before we wrap, which is I think we're in a very weird time right now, and dangerous actually. And so, as a filmmaker, I think the kinds of things that I would try to make, really push and try to make, would be, somehow not so silly. And now, on the other hand, it's not that I'm against comedy at all. As a matter of fact, the message from a great film by Preston Sturges, which was Sullivan's Travels, was how in times of trouble people need to laugh.
Yes.
Okay,
True.
but that said, I think it's the things that are sort of driving me right now are stories that deal with authoritarianism and sexism and racism and xenophobia and fascism and things that are threatening us all right now. And so if for the filmmakers out there, I would say the same thing I say to Valeria and the students at our school, which is make things that matter to you.
Yeah.
No matter what the genre, whether it's comedy, horror, sci-fi, whatever, drama, but making films is really hard. Getting anything made is really hard. Films, TV series, whatever. And since it's so hard, and since it takes so much of your time and energy and life and sleep, that you should really care about it. Otherwise, you do give up. You were saying, why don't you give up on something when you have these setbacks? And the reason you don't is because you care about it. It matters to you.
Yeah.
And if it matters to you, you don't give up, right? So make sure that you work on things that you really do care about, right? And if you do, then maybe you'll succeed and maybe you won't, but at least you tried something you cared about, right? And instead of wasting a lot of time on something superficial or silly, So that's all. But I do hope everybody's okay in the near future. I think we're going to be going through some tough times ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was
Thank
you. Yeah.
beautiful, and a beautiful message, and a very necessary one. It's important that we emphasize that this is something that is it's important and vital, because, as you said, the industry is hard.
Yeah,
So do what
it's
you
tough
love.
business.
Yeah.
But, some people manage to do things once in a
Yeah,
while.
I think
Like
for all
you.
creatives out there, if it's something that you care, don't give up.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
find something that you can feel it in your body, in your heart, that is something that is worth telling, and tell it
And
in
it'll
your own way.
transmit.
Absolutely.
You know, the film you're about to make, Valeria, you know, you care about it.
Yes.
And even if you had to compromise on certain details of it in order to get it done here, you know, it's still something that is about something you care about. And you're not sacrificing the theme or the message or the feeling of it. And so you'll find solutions to everything you have to come up against. That's all.
Yeah,
And
100%. And
yeah.
now I understand that it's all about making compromises, but also, even so, more important, making important choices in the right moments, the ones that you can live with. And also, not only while you're writing on the page, but also when you're directing. It's important because it's a collaborative project. And then, of course, you're going to compromise, but you have to make those choices that you can live with, that looking back on the editing, you know, you're not going to say, oh, I should have.
Well, that happens anyway,
It
believe
happens.
me.
Of course it happens. Yes. But
You know, there's nothing is perfect.
no.
And
And
no,
it shouldn't be.
And
It shouldn't be.
right.
No.
I have
like
the same.
like the Persian carpet weavers. You know, they
Yes.
intentionally put a mistake in.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You know,
Yeah.
because they say only God is perfect.
That's beautiful.
You know
Mhm.
what? On
So.
that note, we're gonna say thank you because
Okay.
that's exactly how it should be.
Okay.
Nothing is perfect, and it should be.
No, nothing. Okay. Well, it's lovely to meet you, Eva, and I'll see you on Monday, Valeria.
Yes,
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.